5 o'clock झाले.
Yes, it is under process.
We are live now, sir.
Yes, we are live now. Please start.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Jyoti Babal, Assistant Professor at SHPT School of Library Science. Welcomes you all to the third session in the International Faculty Development Program on Libraries' Response to COVID-19, Enhanced Online Library Services, which is happening from 12th to 18th May 2020. To begin with, I request all of you to rise for India's national anthem, followed by the SNDT Women's University song. Please rise.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you all. This program is organized by Bharat Ratna Maharshi Karve Knowledge Resource Center and SHPT School of Library Science of SNDT Women's University in collaboration with J. Vatumal Sadhubela Girls College and Mumbai University College Teachers Association. As our today's guest, Dr. Graziano is with us for the first time. So for him and for all the participants, I would like to give brief about all the organizers. In 1916, Bharat Ratna Maharshi Dhondo Keshav Karve founded the SNDT Women's University. It is the first women university in India as well as in Southeast Asia. The motto of this university is Sanskrita Sri Parashakti, which means an enlightened woman is a source of infinite strength. This 104 years old university has 4 campuses in India, that is at Churchgate, Juhu, Pune, and Srivardhan. It ranks in top 50 multidisciplinary universities of India, and in 2016, the university has ranked 6th in Western India according to the Week Hansa research ranking. SNDT Women's University is a home to about 1,100 teaching and non-teaching staff members and about 50,000 plus students which are spread across India. Bharat Ratna Maharshi Karve Knowledge Resource Center has a rich collection of about 4 lakh plus books in social sciences, Gandhiana studies, women's studies, art, literature, nursing, education, and library and information science. The information resources available in the print as well as in digital format. The library is committed in the creation of knowledge system in physical and the virtual environment. The university has a very active library science department named SHPT School of Library Science. Currently, it is offering integrated master program in library and information science and doctoral program. Our students are trained to work in any type of library as we have integrated all the latest trends along with the ICT components in our syllabus with all the basic foundation of LIS. In this COVID-19 scenario, the school is using Moodle, Zoom, email, WhatsApp, and many other tools to conduct lectures and to connect every day with our students. J. Vatumal Sadhubela Girls College is a Sindhi minority college which started in 1994 and is affiliated to University of Mumbai. It is the only girls college in Mumbai Central suburban area. The college offers UG and PG courses in commerce and management. This college has dedicated itself to empower women students in economic, social, and cultural fronts. Now I request Dr. Meenakshi to introduce Mukta's activities.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I welcome you all on behalf of Mukta. My privilege to introduce Mukta and its activity to all of you again on the 3rd day of this International FDB. Mukta is a registered association. It is formed in the year 2008. It is initiated by the former president, Dr. Sekhar Chandatre, and General Secretary, Dr. Namdev Mandge. Mukta is helping teachers since its inception. In 11 years' time, Mukta has reached thousands of teachers across the Mumbai University. Now, currently, our 2 pillars of the Mukta, Dr. Vaibhav Naravade, sir, he is a president, and Professor Subhas Athavale, sir, he is presently with us as a general secretary, taking the Mukta at the highest level and helping the teacher across the Mumbai University. Mukta has contested University Senate elections and 3 candidates could win the election. Initiatives are taken by these 2 pillars as well as Mukta team and the Mukta elected members during these 11 years and given a lot of benefits to teachers. To educate the teachers towards their responsibility and to provide the information, the teacher education cell and teachers grievance cell has been initiated by Mukta during recent years. After the lockdown, Mukta has come to help to thousands of teachers across the various universities, of course not in India, abroad also. Mukta has conducted from April first week 12 webinars on different topics and have received the tremendous support from teachers, response from teachers. After that, the team has decided to help other colleges and university to conduct the webinar. Now, we are providing the technical support to the various colleges and university to help the help the colleges and university to hold the organization. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now request Jyoti Madam to take over the charge of the session. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Meenakshi. Few announcement for the participant before we begin for the part. If you have participants, if you want to ask any relevant questions, then you can send it to the given WhatsApp number which we have provided in emails and Telegram group. Also, at the end of the session, the feedback form will be shared in the chat box, live chat box of YouTube and in the Telegram group. So please make sure that you will fill up the feedback form. Now coming to our session, keeping the trail of the previous two inspiring sessions, today also we have another interesting session on personal librarian program. Our speaker, Dr. Graziano Gratli, is a humble man and he likes to be called by his name. So with due respect to him, I will prefer him to address in the same way. Graziano is a digital project and technology librarian at Divinity School Library under Yale University, USA. He is also a translator, editor, and author. He has published Italian translations of works by Rudyard Kipling, Edgar Allan Poe, James Hogg, Native American and Indian poetry. He has also published several book chapters, reviews, interviews, articles, and essays on Anglophone Indian literature. He is a co-editor of the Trans-Saharan Book Trade of 2011. It is a collection of essays on the technological, economic, and cultural aspects of book production, circulation, and preservation in Muslim Africa. Graziano will be talking about the Personal Librarian Program at Yale University, which is a library outreach initiative that was launched in 2008. He has been involved in this program since 2009, and also he will also provide research support to growing number of faculty members. In his talk, he will focus on the origins, implementation, and the assessment of the program with particular attention to its main aspect, its impact, and its challenges, and he will be focusing on the potential of the program in the current scenario. I request Dr. Graziano, please share your success story with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Babel. First of all, let me thank you, all the organizers of this event, for inviting me. I think it's an important contribution. It's a week long, so it's intensive, and I'm very honored to be part of it. So as Dr. Babel say, I will talk about the Personal Librarian Program as it was implemented at Yale University within the library context, and I believe it was the very first instance of such a program across the library landscape, at least in North America. You don't want to see my face for 45 minutes or so, so I have a PowerPoint presentation that will provide the basic lines and figures, and I will talk in the background, expounding on them. So let me launch the does anybody see? Let me share the screen. Okay, now if I can, here we go. Can anybody see it? So can you hear me fine? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So in the background was a situation that of probably you are aware of as well. Sometimes in the 90s, in the 80s, and especially in the 90s, librarians in academic environments started noticing a decline in student request for help or a change from a more academic, from a more scholarly need for help to more practical and logistical. So it's the typical situation of the reference desk in a large academic library like Sterling Memorial Library was staffed normally by 2 subject librarians who were staff members with PhD in specific disciplines, and they were alternating, and they noticed that the questions changed. Instead of asking about resources, intellectual resources, students and library users in general, they were asking for logistical information. Typically, where is the bathroom? Or where is this room? Or where is that other room? And so they were trying to figure out the reasons, but I noticed that throughout the end of the 90s, at the beginning of the 2000s, the reference desk itself underwent a particular transformation. So from a subject specialist with a PhD, they were replaced by staff members who were clerical and technical, and more recently by students. So the question was, why would we have people with PhDs when the typical questions are about where the bathroom is? One of the reasons for this change was supposed to be the growing availability of resources easily accessible online and in electronic format. And so there was this general sense that librarians were losing contact with their constituency and therefore kind of demeaned in one of their traditional area of expertise. Eventually, I don't remember exactly when, but in the year, definitely after 2005, because I started working at Yale in 2004. So between 2005 and 2010, the reference desk entirely disappeared. And so there was no information point of any kind within the large public accessible area of Sterling Memorial Library. There is quite often when you enter, there is a security with 2 security guards, and most of the technical, logistical questions are answered by them. So as a reaction to this scenario, in 1996, in the fall of 1996, the fall is when the academic year begins with the fall semester, the medical library, which serves the medical school as well as the hospital. The Yale New Haven Hospital is, I think, the largest employer in Connecticut. Is not a Yale University company, but is definitely affiliated with the university and with the library school. So a group of reference librarians decided to try out this, which is basically an outreach initiative to serve a small group of graduate students. They receive about 100, at that time, 100 medical students every year. And how they try to implement this program. So basically, they instead is the question of if you don't go to the mountain, if the mountain doesn't come to you, you go to the mountain. Instead, since the students were not going to them in any format, they decided to reach out to students, and they started by sending an introductory letter. So they basically divided this 100 students among 7 reference librarians who were involved in this program. So divided the 100 by 7, and each one received a group of students and was responsible for sending an introductory letter, promoting the library, introducing themselves. I think that the key word was personal. They probably used the model of the reference of the personal assistant, but the key word was definitely personal. So each student felt that he or she could rely upon that particular resource in the form of human being with a strong background, quite often a PhD, or definitely a subject specialization, and a good knowledge of the library. And he could rely for any kind of help or information that he or she needed in regard to the library and library resources and library services. The mechanism involved follow-up letters and orientation tours throughout the academic year. So less than 10 years later, the model worked. And by 2008, the medical library already had a first survey to assess the success and the efficiency of their program. And I believe as a result of that 2006 survey, and the results were presented across the library system. So the Yale College, the main library, basically Sterling Memorial Library, that serves the Yale College. Yale College is basically 12 residential colleges. They admit in 2008 about 1,400 students every year. Now the colleges are 14. They built 2 more colleges, and the number of students went up. It was 1,800, but in March of 2020, I think 2,300 were admitted. So the number of students went up significantly. The number of librarians did not, so it's still about the same number of librarians. So each librarian is having more students. So the 2 staff members working in the main library decided to adopt the same program to serve the 1,400 students of the Yale College. It was definitely a challenge because there were not many more librarians, but there were definitely more students and a different kind of students, because undergraduates are definitely younger than graduate students. They come from all different backgrounds. And at that point, so when they start, they're still not sure where they are going academically. So the mechanism is that, at least at Yale, the first 2 years you explore, and by the end of the second year, you have to declare a major. So I'm going to graduate in English literature. There's a first major, a second major. So the first 2 years are still an exploration. And for that reason, there was no point in assigning a specialized librarian. So any librarian could become a personal librarian to an undergraduate student for the first 2 years. The same motivations pretty much informed the adoption of the program at the Yale College. Decreasing reference traffic, increasing information resources and tools, need to navigate a complex, diverse, and constantly evolving online environment. I could show you, but I won't. When you access an electronic or even a record, an information record through our online catalog, you are presented with, if the record refers to an electronic resource, you are presented to a second screen where are listed different vendors through which that particular publication is available. Each one may have availability of that journal for a certain range of time. So it's very confusing. Sometimes students, even older students, don't understand what's going on. And they really need to refer to somebody who knows what this structure means. The figures today are, as I say, they were admitted 2,300 undergraduates in March from all 14 residential colleges. There are currently 45, probably a couple more, librarians coming from all Yale libraries. I work at Divinity, which is 20 minutes by foot from Sterling. And the structure is pretty much the same, with probably one small difference. Every fall, so the coordinator of the program divides the 2,000 or so students among the 45. Each one gets a number of students. I usually get some students who are not from the US because I'm not from the US myself. So if there are students from India, or from Italy, or from France, they assign them to me. They used to be, each librarian is a fellow of one of the residential colleges. So we used to get students only from the college in which we were fellows, but that's not 100% what's happening. And then they received follow-up letters throughout the years. One small difference from the medical library is that recently, the last probably 5 years, they, at the beginning of the academic semester, so like 1 month after the first day of class or so, like sometime in September, the library organizes a party at from 4 to 6 p.m. and usually takes place in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, which is a fancy modernist building. And students have the possibility, so each one comes with a tag with our names, students have their names, and it's a way to meet face-to-face with your own personal librarian after he or she already emailed you the introductory letter. I have to say that every year students are slightly different, so generation-wise. And I started, as Dr. Babel mentioned, I started working in this program from the very beginning for the Yale College in 2009. At the beginning, I was not receiving any requests for help, maybe 1 or 2. But as the time passed, and especially in the last 3 to 5 years, the number of requests went up significantly. So I don't understand if it's a question of the resources became more complex or the students became more relying upon a figure, what is perceived as a figure of authority. I think it has to do with the fact that young men and women now of 17, because when they start college, they're 17, they are still very rely upon their parents. Maybe a generation before, they were eager to leave their parents and try to be independent. Now they are really dependent. The parents are just two of their friends, and quite often they follow them on campus. So the link with their parents is still strong. When the parents are actually almost forced to leave the campus after orientation, they miss them. And so the personal librarian psychologically works to fill that gap. The parents are still there, but they're not physically on campus, and they're not the person you would ask about writing your paper for library resources. So the personal librarian feels to some extent that lack of parental advice in a scholarly and academic context. So, of course, there is a web page that is accessible from the front page of the library website. It's the link is called Your Personal Librarian. The page lists what the personal librarian can, what is, what can or cannot do. You have to be careful also to establish some limits. You're not going to write their papers. You're not going to replace the faculty member, the instructor, the professor. You are going to be providing information about library-related and intellectual resources and how to access them and how to use them. A significant component of the sort of instruction or the support that you provide has to do with bibliographic citation. Quite often, the papers that they're writing require that they cite a book, they cite a journal article, they list the type of resources, including primary sources, and nobody knows what a primary source is. So they come to you and they ask, no, I've been asked to cite this, that, and that, but first, I don't know what this is. And second, I don't know how to cite it. So quite often, part of the instruction has to do with bibliographic citation. I'm not going to edit their paper, but I'm going to provide access, provide information about intellectual resources, and provide advice on how to cite them. When you click on the web page, on the dedicated personal librarian web page, on the main library website, there are the small photo portraits of all 45 personal librarians. You click on the photo or the name, and you get to a individual profile with all the contact information, and that states there's a template that you can adopt with information about yourself, but the basic information is how you can help, what you can do, what you cannot do. Unfortunately, I can provide you the link, or you can go to the front page, but as of 6 months ago, they moved access to that page to an NetID only. So if you click on the link, you're not going to go there. So there is no point in giving you the URL, but no, you can visit at least the front page of the library. And an interesting mechanism is that students can find, because in spite of the introductory letter, they probably receive so much information at the beginning of the academic year, so much orientation, that they're totally confused and they easily forget or dismiss your email. So they realize that they need to get in touch with their personal librarian and don't know who this person is. They don't remember getting an email, or if they got the email, they lost it, they deleted it. So there's a way that they can find who their personal librarian is by inserting their name or by inserting their NetID. This is just it's a small font, but it's just a printable version of the front of this page that spells out what I can do and what I cannot do as personal librarian. Is just so the next year, very quickly, the Divinity Library, where I wasn't working at that time, I was still in the main library, adopts the personal librarian program for their own students. Now, these are completely different students. They are less, they're 400, about 400 every year. They're graduate students, but their age may be anywhere between 22 and 75 or even older. And quite often, those returning students are accomplished professionals who at a certain point decide to go back to school. I had to deal with very powerful lawyers, corporate executives, and NGO organizers, So and usually I had to deal with them, with the older ones more, because when they went to school, they got their master, they got their PhD, there was no internet. So they have no, and the majority of the information was available in print. So we're going to photocopy and to request print books. Now everything is available online, everything that they need most, but not only the interaction with student and faculty happens through an online platform. Yale, like use Canvas for learning system, post their materials, and the student access course by course. So a returning student who is 60 years old has much more problem adapting to this environment. And therefore the personal librarian becomes very, very useful. The difference at the Divinity Library is that we are 5 instead of 45. The total staff of the library is 12. We are not completely full. We are still around 10. We still have to fill a couple of positions. 5 professional librarians. They're all involved in the program. And the students retain their personal librarian for the entire period of study. They complete their master usually in 2 or 3 years. And the student age, I already mentioned it. And the same mechanism happens at the Divinity Library. At the beginning of every year, we send a template letter that each personal librarian can personalize with information about himself or herself. And then we are usually in charge of library orientation events, and then we send them. It's very important to use this tool as a way to communicate with students in a more direct and personal way about updates, new library resources, upcoming library workshops, and events that may be of their own interest. I use it quite frequently, emailing my students, but also if it's a topic that pertains to my daily works, digital project and technology support, I can email my student as well as the other students with technical information. For example, new software applications that are available for free through the Yale platform. For example, Adobe Acrobat was available years ago, then Adobe took it away, so it was not free for students. Then it became free again. So I was noticing when I was helping students that they didn't have Adobe on their laptops. So I emailed every one of them to let them know that it was free to download it, and it was very convenient for them to have it. What kind of interactions? Typically by email or in-person consultation. 30 to 60 minutes. Easily spend half an hour to an hour with a student in my office, or if they want to meet somewhere else. In the case of undergraduates, so I'm serving about 30 to 60 undergraduates every year, and I don't know how many, about the same graduates. Graduates, no, they come to my office. But the undergraduates, I usually meet them downtown. When I say downtown, it's around the main library, because to make it easier for them. So we can meet in a coffee shop, or we can meet inside of in a reading room, in a quiet reading room inside of the library. And usually, they have to discuss their paper. So I want a place that is quiet, or we can talk and not be interrupted. Typically, in both cases, undergraduates and graduates, what starts at interaction is a specific assignment. They have to write a paper on such and such topic, or they're doing their own research on a more advanced topic. It may be subject specific. So I'm looking for a book on this. it can be access related, and that the last two, access related and triggered by hardware and software connectivity or other IT issues, that usually falls on my plate. We have an agreement, the five personal librarians at the Divinity Library, that, for example, I don't have a religion background or a subject specialization in religion. I have no clue on most topics. So if somebody comes to me with a question that I cannot, or that I don't feel comfortable knowing the resources, I just forward the email to my colleague, the reference librarian, who is much more competent. If my colleagues have received a request for help that has to do with IT or technology, they forward the request to me. So a lot of requests, more and more, have to do, I would say that more requests have to do with technology or access issues. No, they cannot download an ebook, or they cannot use the VPN or so. We use, it's very important to document what you do nowadays, more and more important. And so we are urged to report our transactions, whether with undergraduates or graduate students, in a database, and we use LibInsight. You're probably familiar with these resources and tools. It's developed by SpringShare, the same one that created a LibGuide, LibCalendar, LibWizard, and other applications. That LibInsight allows you to also to generate reports, which are actually very important for professional advancement. You can show how many hours you dedicated to assisting students. You can be as granular as you want by identifying, by filtering by type of interaction, by email, in person, the type of student. Can be a faculty, it can be a visiting scholar, it can be a, and this is a this is a screenshot that shows the page on the LibInsight platform where you record your transactions. As you can see, it's rather granular. I use only a few fields, but it's very important. No, there are different type of interaction, the amount of time, if it's in person, email, phone, the type of library user, and if you're a personal librarian, it's important that you mention that. And naturally, the reporting is also very important as a way to assess the effectiveness of the program, but is also, there are other ways which are, for example, by surveying students. And the medical library I mentioned in 2006, and right again in 2009, they made, they had two surveys. They surveyed the students to understand, first of all, if they were aware of the program, aware of their personal librarian, and what kind of interaction they had. There were very few questions, very basic. Do you know who your personal librarian is? This sounds a silly question, but a lot of them don't know. Or they know they have a personal librarian, but they wouldn't be able to name a person. Sometimes they don't even know that they have a personal librarian. And then if the amount of communication from your personal librarian is not enough, and have you ever contacted your personal librarian, or how satisfied you are? And the results of both surveys were very positive. Most students, and we're talking about a medical library, most students were aware of their personal librarian. They had used the person, they had interactions, and they were not satisfied about the kind of support they had received. The program was adopted outside of Yale by other academic libraries, and I mentioned list only a few. I have to mention an anecdote. I went to library school in Chicago in 1999, 2001. And my very first, I had to take 4 mandatory courses. One of them was basically was reference librarianship. And it was probably the first semester I took this course, and it was a young instructor, very lively, very vibrant, very enthusiastic. And like 10 years later, maybe around 2010, at that time, she was a reference librarian at the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, and then she became head of reference services at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. So when she was there, she called me and she asked me, or she emailed me actually, and she said, I'm such and such, and if you remember me, basically she was interested in implementing the personal librarian program, and she wanted to know from us how to do it. So it was an interesting story that 10 years later, from my teacher, we were teaching her how to do things in a certain field. We've been thinking at the Divinity Library, not at the Central Library, but we've been thinking about adopting or expanding the program to include or to serve other groups of library users who are not students, but may have similar needs. In fact, half jokingly, I was talking to a faculty member about other things, and he said, why don't I have a personal librarian? And another faculty member who has retired, was an elderly gentleman. A few times he called me to his office because he was having trouble with his computer. And then he started referring to me as, you are my personal librarian. So we've been thinking about, of course, you have to act much in a different way. We are thinking about faculty. We are thinking about visiting scholars and researchers, especially international, because they come from library environment and library services. They may be very different. So quite often they have more problems getting used to our system, or maybe they simply don't have access to as many resources as we do. Like, no, we subscribe to 1,500 databases, and we have 7 scanners, public scanners in the Divinity Library. So a lot of visiting scholars spend all of their time scanning books to bring back in digital format. And so another group of students that became very prominent, and another group of potential receivers of this program that became very prominent in the last 2 years are students with accessibility issues. The term accessibility sort of replaced disability. There's been a big emphasis on on accessibility across the university because of federal laws. I've been very much involved with digital accessibility, so fixing PDFs and other documents for screen readers. So there are more and more students who are coming to me and say, I'm dyslexic. I have problem reading. May I listen to a book in audio format? So we are thinking about that group of students as an additional, like personal librarian plus. They're already receiving their personal librarian letters by virtue of being students, but they probably need a personal librarian plus or a specialized version of the personal librarian to deal with their accessibility issues. So this is, so far I described the program, how it started, how it was implemented across 3 different groups of students within the Yale University system. Now let's get to, and practically I'm almost done. As this is a scenario that looks very familiar to everybody. In March 2020, on a Friday, I went home thinking that I would go back to work on Monday, and on Sunday, there was a message on the phone that asked all non-essential staff to remain at home. And no, we were saying, no, whether you can continue to work from home or not, you're going to be paid. And no, librarians are probably the group of employees that are more comfortable and more equipped for working at home. So that's what we've been doing for the last 2 months. Then all the university buildings were closed and declared off limits, except for security and maintenance people. And some large buildings were converted to medical facilities. So the students were told to the students were in spring break in March, and they were told to either stay where they were, or if they were an international student, they were not going, if they were not in their own country and they were coming back to stay in colleges. All classes were moved online, and all programs or events were they changed to an online format. They were postponed or canceled. In a similar situation, the library was probably one of the most active units of the university to adapt to the situation. But they had very quickly focus and come up with a plan to mainly in the first term, in the most immediate situation, to make sure that the online classes would work efficiently in terms of resources. So we could not scan because we had no access to the scanners. We could not go to the library, but they increased the amount of books that were purchased as ebooks to replace the fact, to address the fact that the physical books were not available. The interlibrary loan, of course, was limited only to materials that were available electronically. So book chapters or journals that we had in electronic format. And at the same time, they are planning for getting ready to start a fall semester that will probably be online. They're still not sure whether it's going to be a mix of online and classroom, but definitely it will be online. So if we, during the summer, have access to our buildings, we'll probably spend the summer scanning books to make them available based on faculty syllabi, to make them available and ready for access in electronic format in the fall. So how the personal librarian what kind of advantage or benefits can provide? We normally would communicate with students by email, but the personal librarian program provides a much more, how would I say, personalized, but also more intimate form of communication with students, especially in the context of the Divinity Library, where we know and we see every day most of the students. So we know how they look like, they know us. We have a lot of students spend their time in the library, most of their time in the library. So we have a much more direct relationship. So when they receive an email from one of us, they know, they can visualize the person, they know who the person is. And they found suddenly in a very difficult situation, so they were unable to use the library and in the physical format, and they were launched into an online learning environment by Zoom that they had only experienced before, but for special situations, not as a day-to-day classroom. And so the program uses, and I'm just reading this because it's sort of a statement, uses proven outreach communication strategies and channels to fill the gap represented by the lack of physical access to the libraries and their collections and services, and the impossibility of having in-person consultations, relies upon ongoing personalized relationship with students, many of whom already have met and consulted with their personal librarian, some regularly, and I have interaction with some of them on a regular basis. Represents the most effective and natural way to keep students abreast of changes in the way library resources are made available and library services are provided. And it's more informal than official communications. We use also a messaging system to when we want to send an email as library, send the email to Divinity faculty, Divinity staff, Divinity students, or the entire Divinity community. But it's a more formal tool where the library speaks or the director of the library speaks and sends a message, while the personal librarian messaging is a much more informal way of communicating. It encourages students to seek assistance when they need it, how they need it, to the extent they need it, and from someone they already know. And it envisions a service model that may become more and more in demand in a future teaching and learning environment in which physical proximity and access represent the exception rather than the norm. I'm afraid, I don't want to be negative, but I'm afraid that what we are doing now, you as well as us and everybody else in different countries, is just a dress rehearsal for a future situation where it will be more and more frequent. It may change completely the way the way things are forced, the way things are happening now. It may change, not completely, but significantly, the way that instruction is provided. It will definitely urge publishers to increase the amount of materials that they make available online. There will be more scanning of physical materials that don't already exist in electronic format. And there will be much more integration of learning management system like Canvas with Zoom in the effort to actually make instruction, online instruction, the norm rather than the exception. Now, 10 years ago, some schools were moving to online teaching only, and they were considered as almost like a second level schools. Now, we have to learn from those schools because we are forced in the same situation. So in a context like that, which I'm afraid, as I say, will become more and more common in the future, and it may have positive aspects as well, the personal librarian program will only thrive and be very useful. And I'm done with my presentation, and I thank you for your attention. Now, if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to at least try to answer them.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Graziano.
You're welcome.
Yeah. We have received a multitude of questions, but unfortunately, we can't answer every single of them. So we have chosen questions which cover most of your queries. The first question is from Paramjit Kaur, SRPA College, Pathankot. Can artificial intelligence take over personal librarian? The implications of AI on library science in general. She wants to know.
I'm afraid I'm not an IT person enough to be able to answer such question. I know that Yale IT is struggling with artificial intelligence because they have some applications that are running on artificial intelligence, and suddenly, no, they have a life of their own, and we had problems with scanners that the system was run by artificial intelligence. Suddenly they were behaving in a way that the vendor could not figure out. But that's the extent to which I can say I have the experience of artificial intelligence. I have no understanding of the possible implication for such. I don't even know if there are such implications for a program like the personal librarian.
Okay, thank you, sir. Dr. Ishappa Bandi from BITS Pilani. In this technological era where users are very tech savvy, needs personal librarian guidance, ? If yes, then how to make LIS professionals ready, and how is the situation in US?
So the person who the question implies the fact that library users are very technology savvy, if I understood correctly.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, yes and no. I can tell you that in my experience, and it's not definitely, I mentioned before, some of our divinity students who are older and they went to school years ago and without internet. It's not the question of age. Kids nowadays, young kids in their 20s, they grew up with they were born with a smartphone, and they have very sophisticated devices, tablets, laptop, and smartphone. They probably know how to use them. They know 10% of what they have. They have no clue of motto. As I mentioned before, there were a lot of them, they had, although only the native software application to look at PDFs on their laptops, and they had no clue that they could get Adobe Acrobat. They didn't have the Adobe Acrobat reader that you can download for free. So don't take for granted that a young person is computer savvy. Maybe in some areas, some students are more computer savvy. Divinity students are definitely not. They're much more intellectual. They spend days and nights reading ancient Greek or Hebrew, but they don't know how their computer works. This is one thing. The second thing is that the personal librarian program and approach, I would say, is not only related to helping students with IT or technology issues. A lot of the very old reference interaction that we did at school, it clearly said that a lot of people ask questions about one particular topic, but the real topic is slightly different. The reality of what they're asking for goes beyond what they're trying to formulate. So there is a psychology component, and the help we provide, in my case, yes, it's more focused on IT, but not necessarily. A lot of people come to me because now more and more because they have accessibility problem, like dyslexia. So it very, I would say, very holistic, the approach. And again, the key word is personal. So I'm not saying that I act as a psychotherapist. I don't address the psychological issues, but there is always a psychological component. So, quite often they are hysterical because they have to print their syllabus before classes that starts in 5 minutes and the printer doesn't work. So the first approach is definitely therapeutic.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I hope I answered somehow.
Yes. Another question is Dr. S. Jana, DLIS University of Kalyani. Is there any classification of personal librarian based on the subject he had completed before getting Elias degree?
Based on the subject, and what was the end of the question?
Is there any classification of personal librarian based on the subject he had completed before getting Elias degree?
No, I would say no.
Okay. Yes, thank you, sir. Then Boni Ghosh from Loreto College. In the context of Indian colleges where students are more than 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, only 1, 2 or 3 librarians are there. How can we apply the context of personal librarian?
Yes, it is a challenge when you have such a different ratio of students to librarians. It's definitely a challenge, but I wouldn't let that challenge stop you, because most students will not contact you. I don't think that if you offer a program and like you have 1,000 students and 10 librarians or 5 librarians, I wouldn't be stopped by that, because those 5 or 10 librarians will not be overwhelmed by requests for help. Don't quote me, I'm not sure, because I'm not familiar I never operated in an Indian academic system. I'd like to, but I'm not familiar. Based on my experience, only a small fraction of students will contact or request help.
Okay.
So I think it's doable, or at least it can be attempted.
Okay, yeah, thank you, sir. Another is Mr. Said from RAK Medical. Are they imparting one-to-one orientations? If yes, then how are they imparting? Or is there any information literacy used for this purpose?
Okay, yes. So let me, at the beginning of each, and now I'm talking mostly about the divinity, the graduate students, the Divinity Library. At the beginning of each academic year in the fall, in August, the school organizes a few days of orientation for the whole system. The library contributes in different ways. Every year we try to change the format. We mostly did recently some drop-in clinics, IT clinics, mostly focus on how to make sure that you download and install your VPN for off-campus access. You download and install the link on your personal computer to print to the public printer, things like that. Once we did it, and it was so crowded that we decided to change the format. They were all sitting on the floor, like 100 students showed up. So every year is a different experience. We change the format. I definitely encourage also to contact me individually, because if I have 50 students and one has a technical problem with their laptop and it's only me, the other 49 are waiting for my help, so it doesn't work. So that's the beginning of the year orientation. Throughout the year, we usually offer more specific workshops, like 1 hour, 2 hours, on subjects like bibliographic citation. I'm really big on research data management. I talk to students sometimes. We look at their paper, and I ask them, where do you keep your research data? And they don't know. They don't keep them. They don't have a storage strategy. So we offer specific 1 hour workshop, and we usually follow up with a quick document that summarizes the information. I've been used to create these short tutorials. Now we are looking more and more at at video tutorials, given the current situations. So there's a proliferation of video tutorials.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. At the end of this session, I would like to thank Dr. Graziano for giving us very informative session, very informative talk on the personal librarian program. It was interesting to know how this program gives a more intimate link with library and how the library staff both in a way mentor the students and in the beginning psychologically also support them. The students are encouraged to seek assistance, especially now when the physical library is closed. What are we doing now may be a rehearsal for how we will be offering services later. He has highlighted that during this lockdown, how the library reconfigured its operations to support the new teaching and learning scenario, with most of its staff continuing to work remotely from home, and how the personal librarian program is uniquely suited to disruptive situations like current COVID pandemic. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you
I would
all.
like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude and thanks to FDP organizing team for making this event successful. I also express my thanks to Vatumal Sadhubela Girls College and Mumbai University and College Teachers Association for their technical support. I would like to express sincere thanks to all the participants for such an overwhelming response and active participation. I'm sure the participants have benefited from this session. With such a successful turnout, we are encouraged to organize similar programs in the future. All participants are requested to fill the feedback of today's session. It is mandatory to all. The feedback form link is shared on Telegram group and also available in the comment box of today's YouTube streaming. Thank you all. Tomorrow's session will be delivered by Ms. Hina Mehta, Library Media Specialist in Benjamin Franklin Middle School, USA. Her topic is School Library Before, During and After COVID. The lecture will be conducted at 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Graziano. Thank you so much. It was a very
Thank
nice
you.
session.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, shall I go ahead?
Please stop the